And I think we can now cut across to Satya Nadella.
From all that progress was even more limited. In other words, the business model that was most successful was the aggregator business model or the marketplaces. Is that enough? Clearly not. So when you look out to the next 10 years, we need broader productivity, broader cross-sectoral impact of digital technology. In other words, for sure the next 10 years are going to be defined by digital technology, but the only question is, how can we make it much more broad? How can we make it much more cut across all sectors? Small businesses, large businesses, both benefit. That's what I want to talk about. Now, the good news is, from a secular perspective, technology and digital technology is just getting embedded in the world, right? So pretty much everywhere, every place, whether it's our home, whether it's our offices, whether it's hospitals, whether it's stadiums, every industry, whether it is energy or retail or agriculture or FinServ, every profession, this is fascinating. It's not just about knowledge work anymore. It's even first-line workers. It can be public sector or professionals. It's the C-suite and the front line. And everything, whether it's a car, a refrigerator, or any machinery, everything is getting embedded with computing, right? That's the real change that is going to be in full force. Now, we describe this world as the era of intelligent cloud and intelligent edge. And you really are going to see a ubiquitous computing fabric that is distributed. You're going to have intelligence that is ambient. You're going to have experiences that are no longer bound to any one single device. You're going to basically have experiences that span devices, span senses. That's the richness of the world. And to me, it comes down to how every organization here in India can ride this wave. And by that I mean build their own tech intensity. There are two, I would say, key considerations for every decision maker. One is, how quickly are you able to adopt the latest technology and make it part and parcel of your organization's tech capability, right? The last thing you want to do at a time of such rapid change is be stuck reinventing the wheel. You want evergreen, world-class technology as just a factor of production inside your enterprise as quickly as possible and keep it evergreen. So that's, I would call it the tech adoption cycle. But the most interesting and important consideration is, you have to build your own tech capability. Whenever I sort of talk to CEOs in particular in other industries, I always say, you'll never be cool by association, right? Just because you do a press release with us, you're not going to be cool. You have to build your own tech capability. That's what's going to be perhaps one of the most defining things in the next decade. Now, in fact, when you build tech intensity, you also need to consider, especially in a country like India, how is what you're doing with digital technology driving more inclusive economic growth, right? We live in a multi-constituent world. Stakeholder capitalism is the thing that all of us are going to be dependent on. So the question is, how inclusive is the growth? So of course you're going to have productivity growth, economic growth, but how inclusive is it? Is there core trust in technology, right? Whether it's privacy, ethics around AI, cyber, that's going to be a huge consideration. And lastly, it's about, is the world that is driving all this economic growth going to be sustainable? So I think every one of us has a role to play in ensuring that we build a more sustainable world. Now, for us at Microsoft, that's the worldview. An intelligent cloud, intelligent edge world that really is grounded in creating tech intensity. That's our mission. Our mission to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more fundamentally comes down to helping each and every one of you to build your own tech intensity. In fact, I sort of sometimes describe it as, how can we help you create more independence, not dependence on us, but more independence as your own tech company, and with your own tech capability. That's at the fundamental primary mission for us as a company. Now, what I want to do for the rest of the time is to just take perhaps a bit of a constructionist view and give you a feel for each layer of the tech stack. So effectively what we're trying to do is build a tech stack, in fact as a commodity input into your efforts. And then we want to package this up as a set of solutions, ultimately to help you transform the outcomes you care about. When people talk about digital transformation, ultimately it's about the outcomes, right? How is it reshaping how you engage your customers or how you optimize your operations? In fact, how are you able to create new businesses and new business models? Those are the outcomes. But what I want to spend a little bit of time today is give you a little bit of a flavor for the tech stack and how it is evolving and perhaps the implications of that technology as it's applied to your industry, to your business. Now, the place to start is with the raw infrastructure, or what we describe, in our case, Azure. Now, the two statistics which probably best motivate what is happening at the infrastructure layer is 50 billion and 175 zettabytes. 50 billion is the number of devices that are going to be connected by 2030. Right? I mean, think about it. There are 1 billion users of Windows, there's 1 billion users of iOS, a couple of billion users of Android. But there are going to be 50 billion connected devices, right? Far dwarfing what is today's, basically consumer operating systems. So that's the infrastructure need. And in fact, it's best perhaps understood when you look at the data, right? Today we have around 45 zettabytes of data. That's going to be 175 zettabytes of data by 2025. So what's the infrastructure that's going to help us navigate this world? And that's what we're sort of building Azure for. As the world's computer, we have 57 data center regions around the world. In fact, one of our core goals has been, how do we meet the real world needs of the world? And that means having data center regions everywhere, but also having all the certifications by industry, by region, having the openness of the stack. It's Linux and Windows, it's SQL and MySQL, it's every layer, it's .NET and Java. So in some sense, how do we build the most open infrastructure again to help it meet the real world needs? But it's not just stopping with the 57 regions. It's going all the way to the edge, right? So when we talk about computing getting embedded in the real world, it's in that hospital that you will need compute. It's in that stadium, it's in that manufacturing plant. And for that, we have really built a consistent edge and cloud model when it comes to development models, deployment models, management, and security. In fact, we're the only public cloud vendor who's sort of had that vision that distributed computing will always remain distributed. And so therefore, we from day one built for what people describe as hybrid. And today, interestingly enough, compute migrates to where data is getting generated, and increasingly data gets generated at the edge. And so that's the computing fabric that we're building. Now, in fact, we see even in India some fantastic examples of people who are already using this. Piramal Glass, for example, took all the IoT sensors and put it throughout their entire production line so that they have a feedback loop for quality control right from where the raw material enters to when the piece of glass packaging goes out, right? So you now think, because of the IoT fabric they have connected to the cloud, in real time monitoring everything. That's a great example. Of course, we have all the unicorns who are cloud native, right? We have Myntra, who is sort of revolutionizing fashion, hitting records in each one of the seasons in terms of the volume they do. InMobi is taking an approach to advertising, just not in India, worldwide, which is revolutionary. Udan's built perhaps one of the fastest business-to-business marketplace, all on Azure. So this is another example of how new companies are getting started scaling fast with the efficient frontier of cloud economics, and that's fantastic to see. Now, so that's the first layer of technology. The next layer is the limitless data estate. Because when we talk about 175 zettabytes of data, the fundamental need for any data infrastructure is that it's got to be limitless. That means the variety, the volume, the velocity of data you're going to generate is something that you need to be able to handle. And we've built that data estate so that we can scale with your data needs. Think about all those IoT sensors generating real-time streams of data that need to be analyzed. That's the type of infrastructure you will need to provision. Now, of course, the limitless data estate, and by the way, the analytics capability that is real-time is perhaps one of the key things, right? If there's one currency going forward, it's your ability to take all this data and make sense of it in real time. That's going to define what happens in the next 10 years. And that's what leads you to AI. If you look at the breakthroughs in AI, perhaps starting in 2014, 2012 maybe, that's when the first ImageNet sort of data started coming out. It's been remarkable when it comes to speech. We set the world record first in terms of the error rates. Same thing around image processing and object recognition. But lately, what has been happening in natural language is just stunning. And this is something that we've been very, very passionate. It's been Bill's, the thing that is always dreamed of is how do I really, in real time, make sense of language and turn it into representation. And so we have really got amazing breakthroughs in both natural language representation, but lately, in fact, just 2 weeks ago, we announced a 17 billion parameter NLG model, which is a natural language generation model, right? You feed it some data, it'll generate. So it's kind of like I could have really done well in GRE if I had this, right? So which is I could have just had it all complete my reading comprehension for me. But it's eerie to think of all the things that one can start doing with this level of natural language capability. But for us, it's not about celebrating any big one milestone from a company like ours. The question is, can we democratize it? Can we make it such that the infrastructure, whether it's FPGA, GPU, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's in the edge, is available like a commodity so that you can create your own AI? Are all the frameworks open? In fact, when we even did the 17 billion parameter model, what we did is we even had something called the DeepSeed library that was open sourced in GitHub so that it's available to the next person who is able to take it and then build on it. Right? So are we making the frameworks and the tool chain around it all such that you can create your own AI? That's the real prize, right? Which is how do you make it easy for anyone to make sense out of data and create their own AI? Now, again, multiple examples. One of the things that we were very thrilled to see is Microsoft Research working locally on driver safety. After all, driver safety and road safety in India is going to be a massive issue. By taking essentially a camera, taking the front-facing camera, or the back-facing camera, the accelerometer, so think of it as multiple sensors that are there in any smartphone, and turning it into road safety. So it's first of all, it can even give you a driver's test, so it can monitor you, but more importantly, it can give you the nudges so that you're driving safely. So that's an AI project. In fact, Ola is looking at that and seeing how if they can scale it out. In fact, use it even as a way for them to decide whether to lease a car to you or not. So we're very excited about how real-world application of AI using even effectively sensors on a phone can be so effective. Another example is what Eros now is doing by effectively building out their media production facility on Azure, but more interestingly, using AI to change how people interact, how speech is introduced in all of their content as an interface. So again, real-world applications of some of this cutting-edge technology such that it sort of changes the trajectory of interaction for these properties. Now, one of the things that I was very excited to read about is Apollo Hospitals and what they're doing with AI, because here's the issue. With cardiac sort of models up to now, mostly the data was data from sort of the West. It never sort of was representative of South Asians. So the accuracy of the models around whether you're prone to any cardiac issues has been just low. Whereas what Apollo has been able to do is to take the clinical data they have and convert it into a much more accurate model. In fact, it's twice as accurate as the models that we've used so far. And that's sort of, again, a classic case of how you can start democratizing the benefits of AI, where the benefits of AI go to the people contributing the data. And so I just wanted to give you a flavor for it by rolling a video so that you can hear directly from one of the doctors who worked on it.
We have 3 million heart attacks which are happening every year in our country. Heart diseases are almost like an epidemic in India. To prevent the disease, you require some cardiac risk scores, which tell the probability of getting a heart attack in next 10 years. Most of the risk scores are developed either in US or in Europe. So when we are trying to apply those risk scores on our population, the outcomes are not satisfactory. Apollo and Microsoft, we partnered and we used the machine learning to develop the artificial intelligence powered score.
All right, then we'll get back, to that conversation that Mr. Nadella was just talking about. So in just a bit, we'll get back there. For the time being, it seems we've had a bit of a recovery coming in our own market. So a quick check on the markets. The Nifty is back above that 11,960 odd mark. Remember, early morning, we went down all the way to around the 11,930 mark. So a bit of a recovery underway. So we'll slip into a short break. You come back, we'll continue our focus on markets. We'll also tell you about a lot of stocks that are moving around. Don't go anywhere.